Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
Eurovision 2025 winners and
For some
losers.
people, Eurovision 2025 was a massive success. For others, it was not quite as good. As is the case every year, there's some people who came to Basel and came to Eurovision and achieved everything they were looking for, while there were others who just fell short. Today, we're going to go through the biggest winners and losers of Eurovision this year. From yet more shock non-qualifications, to underperforming favourites, to both the foreseen and unforeseen triumphs. Before we get started, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy it, and you can check my socials in the description as well. There's also a second channel in the works, so you should subscribe to that, and you can find the link for that down below too. Now, in the process of
Hold up, what's he going to do for the second channel? Let's see, that's interesting. Oh, just notes, Gabe. Oh, maybe like more personal channel. Oh.
making this video, I went back and watched the performances from this Eurovision again on the official YouTube channel. Unfortunately, if you're watching from the USA or a number of other countries, you wouldn't have been able to do that. That's because these videos are blocked. You've been the victory brokers who are selling and removed the shark top. That's Austria because, well, you know, they owed ESC Gabe. With that, it's time to get to our first winner. That is Austria because, well, you know, they literally won the entire contest. That isn't all there is to this though, so we're going to try and dive a little bit deeper into how this became a winning package. During Eurovision week, I said that while I thought this was a great performance, I didn't see it winning. I held on to this opinion right until the last moment before the jury vote started to come in. This was in spite of the fact that JJ's performances had been getting better during the week, and when it really mattered, in the jury final and the grand final, he delivered his best show yet. This was easily the most assured he'd seemed on stage, and his vocals were completely on point. That's only the final piece of a much bigger puzzle though, because this victory was methodically constructed and engineered right from the word go. Last year I talked about how Nemo's victory came by ticking the jury's boxes in a way that nobody else could, and JJ has executed a similar strategy here. That's because Wasted Love
That's interesting. I did, when I first heard it, I compared him to Nemo. I thought it was the same thing, and that was partially why I didn't think he would win. Like, why would we want the same type of similar song winning 2 years in a row, right? He did manage to win, but yeah, it's interesting. I don't know.
ticks the vocal capacity box with ease, has a unique character as a piece of music, and delivered one of the very best stagings as well. In general, we saw juries
No, the stage. I don't know what people like about that stage, man.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm outside this conversation.
buy into these more cinematic style of stagings in a big way at this year's contest, and JJ's certainly fit into that. It's shot in a square aspect ratio, entirely in black and white, and blends beautifully with the vibe and subject matter of the song. A personal highlight for me was the way the paper boat was used to reflect what the mood of the song was as it progresses. When JJ initially sees it, he treats it gently. He allows it to float on his palm for a moment before it drifts away. When it returns at the end of the second chorus, JJ grabs it, lets out a guttural roar, and throws it away. This is such a simple device, placing something in the viewer's mind like this at the beginning and then calling back to it later on, but it adds so much impact to the song. Anecdotally, I've noticed a lot of people highlighting that roar of anger that JJ gave as a real winning moment, something that really humanized him in the eyes of the viewer. It shattered the polished illusion that performance was giving at that moment, and in turn made it more human. If this was the case for you, I would really love to hear about it, so please make sure you comment down below. For all of this though, we need to add some more winners, not just JJ himself. Those are the songwriters Thomas Turner and Taya, along with the creative director Sergio Jaén. Sergio actually posted a really interesting side-by-side of JJ's first rehearsal versus the final version that was shown on stage. And you can see how many of the elements I've discussed here were in there from the very first moment. Nothing about this song, the artist who sung it, the staging, or anything else was by accident. Every element was by meticulous design, and it all came together in exactly the way they would have hoped. JJ is a deserving winner, and only became more so when he used his moment in the sun to speak up for what all Eurovision fans and most people know to be true. He should be applauded for his bravery in spite of domestic backlash in
What did he speak up about?
Is his bravery?
What
I
did
think
he speak up about?
he's non-bi. I
You
guess
think that?
I think so.
I was kind of thinking maybe Israel. I don't know what he spoke about.
Austria. In an unusually positive start to the video, we're going to go to another winner. That is Tommy Cash from Estonia.
Yeah.
Yeah, he won.
On the
I agree.
chart.
He's definitely a winner. He's charting the. We just did UK
Viral.
chart for second week after Eurovision, and he's the highest right now. So he's charting, yeah.
There's actually a few different ways in which I think his success is significant for the competition. So for this one, I'm going to go through each of them. The most obvious thing here is that Tommy was the public's favourite, and very clearly would have won the televote if it weren't for manipulation in other quarters. Tommy himself acknowledged this in his post-Eurovision Instagram story. Getting this kind of strong response. Tommy himself acknowledged this.
I wish we had gotten those 2 points. They added a bit of politics to the job. I'm sad that we're third, but I consider myself second. We Estonians are the most popular in this game.
It's in his post-Eurovision Instagram story. Getting this kind of strong response from the public was always going to be difficult in a year where we also had Barabada Bastu. That could have been a televote lightning rod and taken votes away from Tommy. In the Nordic countries, it was the funny sauna men who came out on top. But everywhere else, it was Tommy. An equally important story amongst this, though, is the fact that Estonia came to the contest with a simple staging, limited budget and no props. It's really important to demonstrate for smaller delegations with lower budgets that you can still do well at Eurovision without having to spend
That's
enormous
true.
I think he definitely had the shock factor with that person coming on the stage. That was very unique, very creative. I'll give him that.
amounts of money and without having to invest in pyro effects and wind machines and everything else. We do, of course, need these things at Eurovision, but for countries with smaller budgets, the fact that you can get to the top 3 without them is a very important reminder. More is not always more, and this proved that. They took what worked at Estilaul, even if I wasn't convinced personally, and developed that concept in a really clever way. I had previously complained that Tommy seemed aloof or disconnected during this performance, and that was addressed perfectly by the addition of the stage invader. Tommy treats them kindly, he dances with them, and then there's a little gag at the end where the security drag her away. This softened his image and opened him up to so many more people than before. Sometimes it is possible to overanalyze something. To be honest, I think I overanalyzed this song into thinking it wasn't going to go anywhere. Myself and a great deal of others simply underestimated him, and underestimated his staying power as an artist and his ability to sell this on stage. The song was good, the staging was funny, and Tommy Cash played his role
I
basically
like
perfect.
also his sense of humor, even with a little bit more performance where he didn't do anything.
Oh yeah.
That was very risky.
In retrospect, this result should not have been a surprise, and who knows how many points he could have gotten if the show was taking place on a level playing field, and if the show producers hadn't tried to firebomb him by putting him in 3rd. It's time for the first loser of this video, and rather than a single country, it's a group. That's the Caucasus nations, with the exception of Armenia. They seem to be
So only 2 winners? I would give other winners. I would say Albania was a winner.
Yeah, a lot of countries, they made history by doing better than they ever did.
Yeah, well, Albania didn't do the best they ever done, but still, I feel like Albania, they kind of took the genre that we didn't know before and made it popular. I think that's a win. Who else was a winner?
The ones that make it on Billboard.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Yeah, but whoever made it on Billboard, and those are winners. Germany is a winner. UK, Loki as a winner. Yeah, I don't think it's just 2 winners, but let's go to the Caucasus nations.
be the only ones here who have half an idea of what it is they're doing. As for both Azerbaijan and Georgia, they seem to be totally lost in the contest at the minute, without any idea of how to get back. Let's start with Georgia. If there's one Eurovision trope that I'm really tired of, it's songs about peace and freedom from countries engaged in the undermining of their own democracy. With that in mind, step forward Mariam Shengelia with her song, Freedom. Of course, this came with some dodgy English lyrics that had more than a hint of nothing to see here nationalism about them. But truly, who couldn't be moved by, I'm living my life with my smile. Kindness is sense of my style. Freedom's what makes life so mine. Home, my sweet and marvelous home. Meadows and mountains to roam. This is my wealth and my throne. All of this wasn't a great start, but you add it to a song and a staging that just don't make any sense. Initially, the song is in 5/4 and it's full of tension and drama. Mariam is standing on Jerry Hale's ramp from 2024 for some reason, in an extremely impractical and quite unfashionable dress. Then, all of a sudden, the dancers are running around her with some flags, and we're in a much more conventional 6/8 time signature.
Yeah, that ramp is weird. Like, why?
Yeah, but remember, we seen that for Ukraine last year.
But it kind of served the purpose. She was walking on it like she's walking on the top of a hill, kind of. This, she's just standing there, like, what?
After that, boom, she's the milkshake man. None of this makes any sense. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan seem to be on a crusade to prove my video where I argue that they are exploiting the contest wrong by sending absolutely diabolically awful entries 3 years in a row. Naturally, these then drown miles from qualification. It's pretty difficult to exploit the contest from 15th in the semi-final. This time, the song at least didn't seem bad in studio, and I could have, emphasis on could, have seen a world in which this made it through to the final, admittedly in a close shave. Unfortunately, we hadn't accounted for one key factor. That was that Azerbaijan brought in a massive star to do their lead vocal. This is the biggest guest star that we've seen in Eurovision possibly ever. Bigger than Flo Rida, bigger than Madonna, bigger than Justin Timberlake. That's because Azerbaijan, for their lead vocal, decided to bring in Mickey Mouse. In general, the standard of life performance this year at the contest was pretty good. But for whatever reason, whether he just had a bad day, whether the mixing was wrong, or whether the song is just not designed for singing live, this was the worst vocal of the year by a mile. Some might point to Tommy Cash or others as comparable examples, but Espresso
No. Tommy Cash is well within his lane. The song is not vocally intense, but he's executing it well. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. Is just bad. There was no, like, the second place I would probably give whose vocals weren't good, maybe Norway. Like, not even Tommy Cash. Tommy Cash, he knows his lane and he stood there. And as much as I'm not the fan of the song, there was nothing wrong with it vocally.
Macchiato is a song that essentially sings itself, so it's not really a valid comparison. Here, the vocal line is extremely exposed for the entire song. That means it has to be perfect. It wasn't, and it really showed. The only points that this received was 7, all from the Sammarinese jury. What that means is, Azerbaijan...
From who?
San Marinese? I think so, I guess San Marino jury?
received a fat 0 from the public that was voting in this semi-final.
But that's interesting. Why did they give them 7 points?
Yeah.
For what?
And now sit with
I
a
guess
total
they
of
just wanted to throw the points.
Why would you throw points? I don't know.
Well, you don't give it to a country that can do better than you. So you give it to a country that you know, okay, for sure people are not voting, so it's gonna skew the votes.
You thinking?
That's what I would do.
You're thinking now.
That's what I'm doing.
Are you thinking? Okay.
22 points across 3 editions, with a third of them all coming from San Marino. To be honest, it's plausible that both of these countries could withdraw from the contest next year. But without meaning to tempt fate, if they do stay, surely it can't get any worse than this. It's time for another winner, and this one isn't an entry at all, but rather the host city and country. This one is a bit niche because obviously 99% of the people engaging with the contest won't be there to see it in person. But please briefly indulge me on this. Basel is probably the nicest city that we've been to in Eurovision for quite some time, in terms of the safety, the cleanliness, in terms of how easy it is to get around, and more. The food was amazing, although it was really expensive, and it was sunny the whole week, which helped as well. We've now not been to a capital city for Eurovision in quite some time, and though that's likely to change next year because we're going to be going to Vienna, I actually really like it like this. When you host the contest in a smaller city, it properly takes the place over, and it makes a real impact. Everywhere you went, there was Eurovision in Basel. Whether that was the village or the Euro Club, the Eurovision street or the arena itself, or the Eurovision square, you get the idea. When you put all of this together, it stops feeling like a concert taking place in a corner somewhere and feels like a festival instead that dominates the city for a week. Along with Liverpool in
That's a nice idea what he's describing. So it's basically, you know how there's Olympic villages, the whole town turns into, so this is basically Eurovision village. The whole town turns into a Eurovision location. That's a nicer idea than hosting it in Vienna and then okay, there's just arena Eurovision and that's it. Like it's not the biggest thing going down in the city versus, like, and if you're in a small town, it's like the biggest thing going down in that town. I hear what he's saying. Yeah, I like that.
2023, Basel is sitting right at the top of my list in terms of the best on-the-ground experience that I've had at the contest. That said, I desperately need somewhere cheap to win so I don't ever have to pay 20 euros for chicken McNuggets ever again. Moving on, it's time to talk about some more losers. Now it's time for the shock non-qualifiers. I'm counting Belgium and Australia in this, but not Cyprus. That's because you cannot show up with a vocal as weak as Theo Evans and expect to qualify. The staging was really cool, but it still wasn't a shock, especially...
Oh yeah, I forgot. Theo Evans maybe is the second worst vocals after Azerbaijan. Yeah, I even forgot about that.
Especially when most of the points that he got appeared to have a whiff of impropriety about them. Let's start with Australia here, which missed out by only a whisker to me. This was staged in a really imaginative way, and perhaps more importantly, in a way that softened some of the harshest edges of the song's content. Gojo's vocals weren't sensational on the night, but to be honest, much like with Espresso Macchiato, I'm not really sure how much that matters with this. What I will say is that having the crowd noise muted meant we lost a huge part of what this song could have been. The sweet, sweet yum yum call and response was completely lost, along with any other potential crowd involvement or elevation. This is one of many, many examples that will hopefully convince whoever it is who's in charge of these things that we need to hear the audience next year. In general, though, it wasn't that the
I agree. We should be hearing the audience.
Yeah, it's kind of odd experience.
It's nice to hear the audience, the crowd. It's just
adds to the vibe.
Adds the vibe, yeah.
Audience didn't like the song. Gojo got points from 12 different countries, which is 3 more than Armenia, who finished in 10th. What did him in here was the fact he didn't get higher than a 6 from anywhere. When Armenia gets 32 from Georgia, France, and Israel alone, that is a massive advantage to overcome. I don't think it's controversial to say that without diaspora voting here, this probably would have been flipped around, and Gojo would have finished 10th instead. As for Belgium, it sadly wasn't so close.
I mean, as much as I wanted Austria Australia to qualify. I do think Armenia definitely should have qualified. So
Yeah.
if Australia was to qualify, it shouldn't have been for Armenia. It should have been for Denmark.
Red Sebastian came into his semi-final with a lot of momentum. His rehearsal clip had gone down really well, his odds were shortening, and he eventually reached a point where he was considered 5th favourite to win the whole contest. Not just to qualify, to win the whole thing. Then we saw the live performance on the night and things felt a little bit more shaky. At the same time, I and most others in the Eurovision bubble still felt that his qualification was totally nailed on. Then the result came. And not only did he fall short, he fell a long way short of making it to the final with only 23 points. 12 of those came from the San Marinese jury, since San Marino is unable to run a televote. Only 3
Honestly,
Points from San Marino is the
I-
death of
I'm
curse.
starting to see that San Marino here just throwing away points for real.
Yeah,
Like,
they
you're
are.
onto something.
3 actual televoting countries awarded Belgium anything on the night. Having had a couple of weeks to digest this one, I have a few theories now on why this happened. The first is that this genre of music just is divisive. And while it's very representative of Belgium's music scene, it was always going to be Marmite for some viewers. In addition, his higher falsetto vocals
Marmite catching strays.
could be perceived as shrill over the top by
You
some.
just
This is
sit
something
to
I have
try
actually been thinking
Marmite.
about ever since the national final, and I've mentioned it in videos before. What I think was more consequential here, though, unfortunately, was the staging and the production. Let's start with that staging. The idea to have a series of fake Red Sebastians was a really smart call, and I thought that this was a really promising concept. I suspect we'll see it in Eurovision again in future, probably to great effect. The problem here is that the execution just wasn't there. It could have been a defining feature of the entire performance, but it wasn't used effectively enough. As for the rest of the staging, all I will say is, in general, it's best to avoid camera shots that make it look like the singer is humping himself on stage. All of that aside, though, I think the production and the sound is what really killed this, just like with Australia. Once again, we have to point to the lack of crowd noise. This is a party song designed for a Tomorrowland-esque vibe, and we could barely hear the audience at all. It sanitized the entire performance and took away so much of its impact. This was only worsened by the fact that, for whatever reason, nobody ever seemed to take the time to set Red Sebastian's mic levels correctly. He's way too quiet for most of the song, and while the vocal might be Marmite, this stripped it of all of its punch, even for people who might have liked it. This was a really disappointing ending to what could have been a really exciting participation, and an amazing result to boot. It's time to go to a positive note, and I am really happy that I get to talk about the next entry in this way. One of this year's biggest winners was Tautomeitas from Latvia.
Yes, I
That's
agree. Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
they definitely did good.
This was one of the songs that I put in my video a few weeks ago where I said that there were
What?
5 contenders.
Lithuania, no mention. I'm waiting for a mention.
I don't think this Lithuania's performance is a winner though. Like, it's not a loser by any means. I think the guy outdid himself, but I don't think it's a winner.
I think he has to talk about it since he was talking about it before.
I am expecting that at least to mention something. Yeah.
For a single space in semi-final
embassy
2.
is
In the
waiting.
end, 3 of those songs qualified. But before you clown on me, in my defense, I was just going off the odds at the time, and I felt like it would be an interesting thought experiment to compare 5 songs that were so different to each other. At the same time, of the 3 that did qualify, this was the one I was happiest about. Making it to the final was already a triumph here, and a really strong jury
He did say in that video that he wanted Latvia to advance because he really likes folk, but he was saying that he don't feel like that's a popular enough genre to get votes. So he didn't say nothing wrong.
performance in the final was a massive success as well. But in my opinion, what outstrips this and is absolutely stunning is the fact that Latvia came second in its semi-final. They received points from every single other country for a total of 130. The only tinge of sadness here for me is so much more could have been possible if they were operating on a level playing field with everyone else. You all know what I'm referring to. Sometimes in Eurovision, you do just get the most joyful and unexpected surprises, but they don't just happen
don't
by
know what you're
accident.
talking
They are made, built by months of underlying work that all comes together at the right moment. Tautomeitas stepped their game up for these shows. They developed the concept that they first established
What is he talking about?
I am curious.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
at the national
wish you could be
final, and
just
they gave their
direct
best
about it.
vocal
Yeah.
performances in Eurovision week itself as well. I stressed in advance of the contest that this would have to be super tight vocally in order for it to transmit to the audience. Thankfully, they exceeded even my highest expectations. I really liked the subtle change in vibe from foresty fairies at the national final to slightly more foreboding and mysterious fairies at the actual contest. There were also some really nice and memorable touches added to the staging. I think the highlight for most people here, especially the furries watching, would have been the tails that all of the girls sprouted during the bridge. This is a victory for Latvia at the contest and and for Tau Tomatoes, but also for folk music and for singing in your own language, even if it's not a mainstream language. On that subject, we have another winner to talk about here. 2025 was the year where non-English songs were maybe among the biggest winners of all. Since 1999, songs have not had to be in the national languages of the participants at the contest. Initially, that led to a complete domination of English in the 2000s. This year, for the first time this millennium, we had more than 20 songs sung in languages that weren't English. We had songs in 7 different languages in the top 10 of the contest and 9 languages in the top 10 of the televote. And this can only spell good news for the contest's future. It's clear that whatever previous stigma or negative impact that singing in your own language had no longer exists. It might even be working in reverse now. In turn, that will encourage a greater diversity of songs, of genres.
I don't think it's working in reverse. English songs still won. So,
We'll see next year.
well, top 2 are English. Yeah, we'll see.
Genres and of artists at the competition. This is especially true for groups along the lines of the Latvians that we've just discussed, because folk music naturally is generally going to come to you in the native language of the country in question. We're coming to the end of this video, and while I opened with 2 of the biggest winners, I'm deciding to end with the biggest loser, but with a touch of optimism at the end. Last year, this dubious honour went to the EBU, but this year I'm sparing them. The biggest loser of Eurovision 2025 is everyone who engages in voting manipulation. The obvious example here was Israel, but this is actually a problem that has existed for years and years now. Take Moldova in 2021 or Cyprus this year for examples of this, where in low viewership and naturally therefore low voting total countries, they mysteriously found themselves bagging some really high points from the televote. This has been a blight on the contest for some time, but it's always been subtle enough to avoid close scrutiny, not trip whatever detection systems are in place, and mostly not have a significant impact on the result of the contest overall. Unfortunately for everyone, subtly or otherwise, who's been engaging in this, the extremely blatant case of this year's televote being manipulated is going to see this kind of thing become likely far more expensive and far more logistically difficult to pull off. We talked last year about how a series of broadcasters had called for reforms in how the public vote worked, and we've now
I mean, yeah, everybody wants to accuse Israel, but let's see some proof. I mean, yeah, the results are shady, we get it, but he's already concluding that.
But also, a lot of mentions of San Marino being shady with the votes.
I mean,
That should be
the
counting
votes
as
are
manipulation.
interesting. The votes are interesting. I don't know. It's just, like, I feel like we can't keep throwing Israel under the bus without any proof. Like, it looks suspicious, yes, but let justice do its course and get investigations going and see if there's any proof, because we can't just pick a country and because we don't like the result and accuse it of something. Like, I'm sorry, but that's not how life works. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it was fraudulently achieved. Like, we have to wait and see. We can't just keep mentioning Israel, because okay, how do we know Estonia didn't fake it? Second, what they got
2 points short.
yeah, 2 points short or whatever. How do we know that Estonia, such a small country, how did they, not a big diaspora, how were they able to pull this off,
That's true.
I mean,
but then again, it was a viral song.
I get it, but I'm just saying for the argument's sake, like, we can't just, it's just not fair to do that. And until we have some tangible proof, we can conclude, okay, they cheated. We can't keep saying, because he's not saying like, oh, allegedly or not. He's saying, oh, it's the most obvious case. That's literally his words, and it's not really obvious. I mean, it, looks suspicious, but it's not. You can't say it's obvious, because correlation is not causation.
Now had an EBU statement confirming that talks are going to take place on this very subject. Given that broadcasters from the Netherlands and Spain are among the ones that have spoken out publicly, and these are among the biggest contributors to the contest in terms of participation fees and in terms of audience, I am optimistic at the moment that the rules will be changed, and this kind of ridiculous and bizarre result that we saw in 2025 won't be repeated. What happened this year with the televote was wrong, and it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Hopefully, though, the brazen and overt nature of it will mean that the EBU will take the opportunity to turn it into a long-term good for the competition. They can do that by embracing the clear appetite for change among broadcasters in this regard. With that, it is time to wrap up for today. Make sure to like and subscribe.
Okay.
Get into the comments. I was not expecting to see more Eurovision content.
Yeah, I think people still, talking about the past one until something new drops for 2026. Then we're gonna go on to that one. Argentina seems to be doing very well as well now as well. Despite the mid-final ranking, they are charting a little. Yes, they are. It's a good song. It is a good song. My biggest issue with them was always their live performance, but the song is a good song. I think another winner worth considering Germany.
That.
Yeah, that's what we said. Yeah, going the contest, I think everyone expected a bottom 6 finish because of Tina's poor vocals in the NF, but instead they pulled a 15th place and over 150 points, which Jesus 4/15th is a lot, and on top, Bowler has become a big hit and fourth most streamed song. Mm-hmm. Azerbaijan's collapse was so diabolically bad that Georgia, the other loser of the category, mind you, scored 4 times as many points as Mama Gama.
Yay. Well,
Yeah.
guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. Share as much kindness as possible.